Namaskar. Welcome to this new session. We have commenced understanding the Samapatti, and in Samapatti, we saw the classes Grahitr, Grahana, Grahya. Grahitr, the subjective entity of pronoun I, because all knowledge, all experience comes to I, the pronoun I. And the Grahana and Grahya are namely instrumental and objective agencies. We will have no difficulty in understanding that Grahya class is object of Samapatti. So also we can understand the Grahana class as object of Samapatti. But it is difficult to construe that oneself is object of Samapatti. So that's the intriguing aspect in these transformations, that one transforms into Grahya, one transforms into Grahana, and one transforms into Grahitru, is what is implied in Samapatti. And towards the end of the last session, I said that we are going to embark upon this intriguing aspect, such as I know myself, I realize myself. Knowledge about oneself, where the condition will be I know myself, I realize myself, and in Samapatti I become myself. So, for a materialistic man, temporal man, an intellectual man, logical man, this is difficult to assimilate, that I become myself. Because one is oneself. If I am myself, I am already myself. What is this becoming of myself? What is this becoming of myself by myself? So, that's the intriguing aspect. What is called as Atma Sakshatkara, self-realization, is little intriguing if you really try to ponder over it. What is called as Atma Jnana, or what is actually Adhyatma. And you should recall, and I would perhaps should be telling you to go back to the Vikalpa Vritti that we discussed in epistemology. So that will give some foundation for what we are trying to pursue now. So the statements such as I know myself, I realize myself, I become myself, have some kind of confusion potential, confounding potential. And in philosophical argumentations, it's called anyuna or atmashraya. This anyuna atmashraya defect, which philosophers speak about, is quite interesting. And to explain out the defect here, the common man is given an example. Suppose I am walking. I have walked 8, 10, 12, 15, 20 kilometers. Naturally, my legs are fatigued. And if the child is also walking alongside, the child also will at some point in time complain that it is fatigued and it can no more walk. So if it is a child, the elderly person mounts the child on the shoulders and then walks the distance thereafter, because the child is now no longer able to walk. But if the adult himself, when adult gets tired, it cannot be suggested that he should mount on his own shoulders and walk the remainder of distance. So to imagine that somebody, because he is tired, mounts on one's own shoulders and then walks the whatever distance is quite nonsensical. So similarly, in philosophical argumentations, if such conditions are seen appearing, then these defects are pointed out. That is called anyuna. That means the dependent and the depender are one and the same. Otherwise, dependent and the resort are two different things. If you want to depend on someone, you must have someone on whom you can depend. But if you yourself are going to extend the help, when you yourself you are dependent and then you are trying to take your own help, so that is a kind of anyuna. That means inseparability between the supporter and the supported. We can be supporting someone and we might be supported by someone. But when there is indistinction between the supporter and the supported, if it is one and the same entity which is supporter and supported, one supporting oneself, then that is a defect. Because there must be two entities, supporter and supported. So in philosophical argumentations, they point out any such defect if it is there, and they say that there is anyonashraya dosha or atmashraya dosha. So if one is tired, there cannot be a suggestion that one should mount on one's own shoulder, since if the child which is walking besides is tired, we pick up the child and take the child over the shoulder and then we walk the rest of the distance. But we cannot be mounting ourselves on our own shoulders and then walk. Where are the legs to be then walking? So that's the anyonashraya dosha. So in philosophical argumentations, one knows oneself, one realizes oneself, one becomes oneself, are objected. There is an objection for such postulations, because there is a mix-up between the knower and the known. The known is also oneself, the knower is also oneself, the instrument of that knowing is also oneself, and therefore such defect can be pointed out on logical plane. But what is being dealt with is something out of mysticism. It is from mysticism. So therefore, if this is looked at as mysticism, then one will be able to reconcile. If the mysticism is not accepted And if the mysticism is rejected, then it is very difficult to accept this kind of condition out of logic. And a wise person should know that there are many things which transcend logic. If something is not logical, it is not necessarily illogical, but it can be illogical. So you can't just write it off. If something is not logical, you cannot put a tag on it that it is illogical. There must be investigation to see whether something is illogical. That means transcending logic. So, Samadhi comes in mysticism. This very subjective entity, the aham, it is indeed a mysterious concept. Because this self, which is oneself, this self is, according to metaphysics, ananta, anadi, ananta, amara, aparanami, avyakta, achedya, agamya. So these are the certain predicates which come in Bhagavad Gita to explain this marvelous entity of self. Now we for ourselves, we know that we are born at some point in time and then we will be dying at some point in time. So we are not immortal for ourselves and with our experience of ourselves. So therefore, the self is seen to be having a beginning, having an end, and having the changes as well, because we are changing from stage to stage in life, from infanthood to very old age, or what is called as decrepancy. We go through several stages. And therefore, for a layman, it is very difficult to really understand this, which metaphysics postulates that the self, the Atma, is anadi, beginningless, ananta, endless, amara, deathless, aparanami, changeless, avyakta, nominal, and then achedya, agrahya, agamya. So all these predicates we have really considered while we were dealing with vikalpa vritti, and therefore I suggested that one should go back to vikalpa vritti to have some memory about this entity of the self, which is always described with vikalpa vritti. The subjective entity is so centric to everybody's experience, everybody's knowledge. Because if you get knowledge, you say, I have the knowledge, I got the knowledge, I now know it, I am the knower. Or in case of experience, you say, I am the experiencer. So subjective entity is having kartrutva, bhoktrutva, gnatrutva. So everything is around this subjective entity of pronoun I. So therefore, the point is, in philosophy, you are expected to make an inquiry of this very centric entity. Because nobody rejects the self. The self is accepted by everyone. Maybe even intellectual rational person. highly intellectual person. But nobody ventures to inquire into it. There are many courageous people who undertake lots of adventures. Then there are also stuntmen who perform incredible stunts, but they are timid if they are asked to have self-inquiry. So generally materialistic person is afraid of self-inquiry, and that is why materialistic people do not go for self-inquiry. Oneself is fearful for them. See the strange condition. And that's for those who go into self-inquiry are described in Upanishads as Dhira Purusha. It requires a lot of courage to really go into self-inquiry. And then one might commence, but one doesn't persevere there too long, because it is quite dreadsome. If proper supports extended by Adhyatma Paramartha are not taken, then really one cannot go too long in such inquiries. The point is, the very pronoun I is such an entity about which nobody goes for inquiry. We want to know all that is around us. We want to know all that is light years away from us. We want to know all those distant galaxies which are light years away. But one doesn't turn to oneself. And that's why what is called as spirituality in this language, which is not appropriate term. So they are unique people. Philosophical minded people are unique people. They venture to go into one's own inquiry. What is called as, that's why it is, the self has to be searched. Now a materialistic person takes this as something very ridiculous. What is there in self-search? I do exist. They don't have any doubt about one's existence. But they do not have courage to really go into search of it, because they think there is nothing to search. And philosophy tells us that that is only the thing which should be searched. If you search that, everything is searched. If you know that, all that you need to be knowing is known. And therefore, in Eastern philosophical tradition, the inquiry into self, oneself, has gained paramount importance. It's quite fascinating even, actually, if you are a student of philosophy or perhaps Adhyatma, a seeker of oneself, would soon realize that this Aham Tattva is quite fascinating. And it is something that we do all experience. It is not an agnostic thing. We all have experience of ourselves. And therefore there is no room for any agnosticism or skepticism. One doesn't doubt one's own existence. And then it is centric force to all processes of kartrutva, bhoktrutva, jnatrutva. The doership, the endurership, the experiencership, and knowership. But this I is really fascinating. As I said during the last session, that on waking up, when you wake up, what is that pronoun I? The first moment and just for a moment. It doesn't extend. But very first moment and the just one moment, when we come to a wakeful state very naturally, how is that I, pronoun I? For a moment it is without any delimitation. But once that moment slips away, then we start becoming what we really empirically are in the world. Now, what we are real in the world is not essentially real, it is unreal. This is what philosophy tells us. What really you are in this world as somebody's father, somebody's son, somebody's mother, somebody's sister, somebody's daughter, somebody's brother, somebody's uncle, somebody's nephew, somebody's niece, somebody's cousin, somebody's friend, somebody's teacher, somebody's student, somebody's master, somebody's subservient, somebody's superior, somebody's inferior. So all these things, what we are really in the world, we are not really that actually. Essentially not really that. But all those things get mounted on our psyche and we start becoming all that. So we become aware of what we are, who we are. We understand the relationship, our relationship with the things around and with people around. We become somebody. And there are so many things which become our things. That's how our business activity of life commences. We start identifying our likes, dislikes, our possessions, or those things which are not our possessions, somebody else's possessions, our people and not our people. So we start identifying all this and then we carry out our business activity of life depending upon all that. Now, the same person who couple of moments before was fast asleep, before coming to a wakeful state, before awakening, the person was in a dreamless sleep for quite a while. So what was that existence, or what were you? What were you before you came to a wakeful state? You were existing, although you were not having any knowership, doership, endurership, etc., experienceship, etc. Nothing was there, but yet you were there. No kartrutva, no bhoktrutva, no jnatrutva, yet you were there. And that is why, if you recall, while delineating on sleep, I told you the conditions such as Govinda is sleeping, but one who is sleeping is not Govinda. Because Govinda means somebody's son, somebody's father, somebody's uncle, somebody's brother, somebody's cousin, somebody's uncle, something to someone. But when fast asleep, atra pita apita bhavati, mata amata bhavati. The father becomes non-father, son becomes non-son, mother becomes non-mother, daughter becomes non-daughter, brother becomes non-brother, sister becomes non-sister, husband becomes non-husband, wife becomes non-wife, king becomes non-king, pauper becomes non-pauper, rich becomes non-rich, poor becomes non-poor, strong becomes non-strong, weak becomes non-weak. So, in that state of sleep, we do exist, but yet we don't have any experience of whatsoever kind, and no knowledge, no experience, and no doership as well. All our agencies are taken away from us for some time. And in that state of sleep, we don't have delimitations. No caste, no class, no creed, no race, no ancestry, no age, no gender, no status, no stature. So we are all without that. Now you can't even imagine you without all those things when you are in a wakeful state. They all stick to you so much that you really cannot separate yourself, and you become that. You become father, you become son, you become mother, you become daughter, you become husband, you become wife, you become master, you become servant, you become teacher, you become student. So all those things, they become as if they are integrally ours, and we just cannot be separating ourselves from all those aspects. They are called upadhis. They are all called delimitations. Caste, class, creed, race, ancestry, genetic background, genealogical background, ethnic background, gender, age, status, stature, condition, etc., etc. But then how are we essentially? Essentially, we are all not that. We are ageless. We are genderless. That means transcendent. We transcend all those things. We transcend age, we transcend gender, we transcend caste, class, creed, etc., etc. And that is what we are essentially. This is what the Adhyatma tells us as to what we are really. So understand this aham. It goes in fabulous kaleidoscopic conditions during the day, during a stage in life, and during the life itself. And this is strangely understand here. It is so interesting that a baby doesn't have sense of I, which we have it. We have our sense of I, and therefore we say this is me. We feel that this is me. We know that this is this is me. We are convinced that this is me. That this is me is irrefutable. And there is not even slightest doubt about this is me. But when you were baby, infants, you did not have that me. You did not have that sense of me, but you had sense of mine. Without me, you had all mine, my father, my mother, my dad, my mom, my toys, my things, my chocolate. So the mine was there, but the me was not there. So when you were infants of couple of months or even year or so, the pronoun I was not there, the sense of I was not there, experience of I was not there, yet the experience of mine was so strongly there. Nobody could grab a toy from your hand because so much was sense of possession for your toys that you would not part it with anyone and would not allow anyone to take it from your hands. So, the sense of mine was there when sense of me was not there. This is something like existence in a beheaded condition. Not having sense of me, a pronoun I there, or the sense of me, the mind was there, because the mind is offshoot of me. The first of all, the me should be there, and then you have your mind. But in infanthood, it's a strange condition. You don't have me, but you have so much of mind that you grab all those things, you embrace all those things as mine, which cannot be accommodated by your two hands, two arms. If you try to embrace all that is yours, you cannot be embracing in your infanthood with so small arms. But they see the strange condition. So what is this me? Is it not intriguing? Is it not fascinating? Is it not interesting? So that is why in philosophy, in Oriental philosophy, rather than having thought speculations, basically it was who am I? This is so specific, typical of Oriental philosophy, who am I? Rather than philosophers' inquiry as to what all is this? What is all this around? Philosophers also had this inquiry, but Adhyatmavadi philosophers, they have first question, moot question, fundamental question, foundational question, who am I? But we people who are occupied in our worldly life and hecticality of mundane life or practicality purpose in life, we really don't have the sense of I really given importance. It will be there. Now this pronoun I, what is it? So Patanjali says that it is a reflection in our psyche. It's a reflection, asmita, it's a reflection. So when it is said to be a reflection, again very interesting inquiry opens out. Where do you get reflections? The best thing to get reflection is mirror. Mirror. Now see, the mirror is such a thing, such an object, which never ceases to cast reflections. You can never have a mirror not reflecting. Mirror is ever reflecting. It doesn't cease to be not reflecting even for a moment and even split second. If you wrap the mirror it will reflect the wrapper. If you apply a coat of tar on mirror, mirror will reflect that coat of tar. If you take mirror in a total dark room, it will still reflect the darkness. So mirror doesn't cease to be reflecting. It always catches the reflected into it, and it always gives reflection. So similar is the case of this pronoun I. So with the pronoun I, like if you have contorted mirror, you get contorted reflection. So our pronoun I, who are totally sunk in mundanity, the mire of mundanity, our pronoun I is having lots of refractions, indentations, and contortions. This is what happens to us, because in our worldly life we are somebody to somebody. Somebody is somebody to ourselves. And therefore there are lots of indentations, and therefore we never get clear reflections of ourselves. But this is such an entity, like mirror will always reflect. The subjective entity of pronoun I is also similarly a unique entity. It can know itself, and it is knower of everything. Basically, this has to be understood. This is typical of our psyche, constitution of psyche, where we are not only knowers, we also become knowables. And Patanjali postulates this in the 4th chapter. Drashtru drushyoparaktam chittam sarvartham. The chitta is something which will know the whole world that is around you. All that you want to know, it will help you know that. Plus, it is also something that it will know itself. It will know itself, it will know the self, it will know everything apart from you. So it will know you, it will know anything and everything that is apart from you. That's a unique endowment of human psyche consciousness. And the chitta, drashtru drushyoparaktam chittam sarvartham. In one of the Indian philosophies called Vishishtadvaitam of Sri Ramanujacharya, he has beautiful concepts of dharma bhuta jnanam and dharmi bhuta jnanam. So we are so constituted, our subjective entity is so constituted that it can know everything that is around it, and it can also know itself. It can know itself, it can know ourself. So try to understand these statements. Chitta knowing itself, chitta knowing all its objects, and the chitta also knowing the very self. It can know all class of drashta and the entire class of drushya. And therefore there is something called as Atma Sakshatkar. Who knows oneself? So there is that question which comes in Upanishad, where in a very, very informal setup, Yajnavalkya says to his disciples Vijnatara mare kena vijaniyat. How will the knower know itself? It's quite intriguing. It's not easily, you cannot be deciphering it easily. But this is the thing, that our chitta can know all the objects, chitta can know itself, chitta can know the very self. And that is what Patanjali is trying to tell us here. Grahitr, Grahana, Grahya. The chitta knowing the things which are apart from itself is called Grahya Samapatti. The chitta knowing itself, which is instrument of all knowledge, experience, or doership, endurership, and knowership, is because of the chitta. So it will know itself as a doer, as an endurer, as an experiencer. It will also know that self which is neither endurer nor experiencer nor knower, the metaphysical entity. So we are endowed with such a psyche, consciousness, that it is probable, and now Patanjali is trying to theorize all that by Grahitr Samapatti, Grahana Samapatti, Grahya Samapatti. So we are venturing to decipher the three kinds of Samapattis, and therein the very intriguing. Now understand, chitta knowing itself is one thing, and chitta knowing the self, metaphysical self, is another thing. And chitta knowing all that is which is non-self, the entire knowables. So it's a very fascinating topic that has commenced. So knowing the very substrate is the Atma Tattva, Purusha Tattva, Chinmatra Tattva, Chit Tattva. So Chitta can know that. That is called Dharmi Bhuta Jnanam. Knowledge about oneself is Dharmi Bhuta Jnanam. Knowledge about the whole rest of the things is called Dharma Bhuta Jnanam. So that's how human psyche is constituted, that it can be knowing Grahya, Grahana, Grahitru. So since this is quite a mind-boggling and intriguing concept, in this session I don't want to go further. So let us adjourn this discussion here, but let's try to understand the importance of Grahitru Samapatti here, and how this pronoun I is so intriguing. It can help us know itself, and it can help us know ourself. Anyway, with that we will be ending the session today. Namaskar all of you.